both of you are specifically involved in trying to change people's thoughts. I mean, in terms of censorship, is to allow is presumably in terms of has an overall ambition, some sort of idea of freedom of thought, and you're trying to change people's thoughts because there's a lot of people going around with some pretty bad thoughts. I mean, Islamism is a form of totalitarianism, isn't it? I mean, in that sense, and it is enforced through the idea of thought crime. So that you're very much, you have to get into that in order to change people's attitudes, in order to change people's thoughts, so they stop thinking in certain kinds of ways. Yeah. So this is thoughts are a legitimate battleground, surely.
Well, I mean, in my case, and what I find most interesting about my job is the impulse to censor, and that every single person, even if they don't realise it, there is a line for everybody, for everyone. At some point, there will be something that you will want to censor, because you will be so horrified by it or revolted, however sort of liberal you are about pornography, or there will be a line that you will not want to cross, and at that point you can ask some sort of interesting questions about yourself. And so it's that we all in some way want to control other people's thoughts, whether it's people who are close to us. We all have that impulse, and I think that that's one of the most interesting things around the whole issue of censorship. Why that is that we, individually or in terms of the state, that there is that desire to control.
Well, I think absolutely, but self-censorship though surely is a prerequisite of civilization.
I think it probably is to a degree, yes. I think it is.
And before we even talk about government repression, I mean, there is this idea of thought crime as kind of, there is actually the censorship which you perform upon yourself quite legitimately.
Yes, and yes, sorry.
And you wouldn't want that not to be the case also.
Well, again, and I think you're right in terms of being civilised as a child from the earliest stage. You are taught what is and isn't acceptable, and you can only become a member of society when you engage in that acceptable behaviour. So, as Freud showed very, very well, we have the superego, whatever you want to call it, that represses those sort of outrageous desires or fears or whatever else, and that's the way that we all.
Yeah, and that self-censorship is kind of required. I mean, if you shared with the world every terrible, stupid thought you had, then it'd be kind of fairly embarrassing. You lose loved ones very, very quickly. And actually, you need that degree of sort of self-restraint.
But the point is
that messy compromise.
Yeah, but if that is given that is the case, and if we agree on that, then it seems quite legitimate to actually work in that area. And why should a government not also? I mean, there are certain practical problems in determining what people think, and we talked about the twitch, and they were able presumably to interpret this the twitch as in whatever way, however distorted.
I think there's a difference between trying to dictate to people what you think they should be thinking and encouraging people to think what you think is correct. And I think it's important to draw that distinction, because surely if our government was supporting pro-democracy movements in Iran or China via, for example, diplomatic means, or through media, or through whatever means that it can that are legal, and that also don't violate international law, which is important, surely that's a good thing. I mean, surely that's important. That's an important part of our foreign policy, to try and promote freedom and to try and not support dictatorships and people that torture or mutilate others. So I think encouraging people to think along the right lines, and I stress through legal means, not conservatives here, whether invading Iraq was legal or not, but through legal means, I think there's nothing wrong with that. But I think what we're talking in terms of thought crimes, when you actually criminalise what somebody's thinking, and you start trying to dictate to them what they should be thinking, and that's where there's a problem. And that's, I think, again, back to that distinction between the civil and the legal distinction I made earlier, that you could pretty much tolerate things legally, but then still in civil society encourage people to change their ideas. And yes, we're doing that, and also we make no qualms about the fact that we receive a government grant, in part, to do that as well. Part of our funding comes from a government grant to challenge extremism, both here and abroad. I just got back from Pakistan, where I spent a month touring the country there, and I accessed over 5,000 students. I went to all the universities, and we were basically saying, look, we have to start taking responsibility. Muslims have to start taking responsibility for some of the extremism that's coming from their end. So I think I don't think there's anything wrong with encouraging good thoughts as long as it's done in the right ways, and then people are left to choose whether they want to actually accept what you're saying or not.
I mean, presumably this is the whole what this is all about, and indeed why we're gathered here actually is in order to encourage good thoughts and to further our understanding of what that might mean, even actually, to good thoughts.